Well, hi everyone, I'm John McLeroy and I'm your host for the Florida Aviation Network for this segment as we broadcast live and in the clear from the Aerospace Discovery at Florida Air Museum here at the Sun and Fun Complex in Lakeland, Florida during the 44th annual Sun and Fun Fly-In and Exposition. And I'm very pleased to tell you that it's a beautiful day for flying out here today. If you're in Central Florida, you have got to be here for the Sun and Fun Fly-In. It's an absolutely gorgeous day. People are flying in, they're flying out. We've got an air show starting at about 1 o'clock. It's going until about 4. All kinds of warbirds. P-51s are here, and I'm going to get to that in just a second. That's an important little hint, as well as the F-16s and the military is showing up with the warbirds. So just a fantastic day of flying, the light sports, the general aviation. People have built and flown their own airplanes in here. It's just a great day to have a good time with your friends, family. Pilots and non-pilots alike are going to enjoy themselves. So my next guest is the infamous Dr. William Busch. Bill Busch, we call him Doc, and AVDOC 51, right? Isn't that
That's it.
That's you? So if you don't know about Bill, it's just a pleasure to have you with us today. We're going to get into that. Welcome.
Glad to be here.
Always good to talk with you. Now, Bill, I mentioned earlier, usually I'm behind the camera, but today I get to hang out with you on set, and we're going to cover some of the important things that are near and dear to your heart with regards to aviation medicine and the FAA medical, as well as talk about Stallion 51 and the role that they play and the position that you are in at that facility. So it's I love it there because you have a one-stop shop. You can come in, get taken a look at by you, and then go right out, and you could fly in if you wanted to, right? So
you can fly in and park right at the front door,
and then
in whatever you want.
Come on in and literally come into the hangar and then take care of business and get with you. So walk me through what it's like to be you for a day when you're at Stallion 51. What is it like to be a member of that team?
It is quite a team, as you said, Stallion 51, and we have the whole gamut of pilots and maintenance crew. But basically, it's a company that Lee Lauterbach founded about 30-some years ago to provide training in the P-51 Mustang, and that's where it all started, with one Mustang called Crazy Horse. And over the past 30 years, it's evolved into many things. So now we have multiple Mustangs to train in, or to get an orientation hop in. And then we have a T6 program to train, or we have orientation flights in the T6. And then we have an L-39 jet that we use to train in unusual attitude training, or the UAT program. And that's geared towards corporate level pilots, but it can be regular pilots.
Corporate and airline, yeah.
Corporate airline, and anybody really that has a pilot license. Teach them about unusual attitudes and upset training in the instrument and night environment, which is a high risk environment.
I want to get into that a little bit later on because I'm very interested personally in the vestibular sensations and those illusions that are created when it comes to inducing a movement, and some of those illusions and false sensations that happen, and if you're not feeling 100%, that's sort of the...
Well, the pilot is his own keeper. If you don't feel like flying, you don't fly. And so you can take that to any degree, mental, physical, or otherwise. But back to your original question, what do I do on a daily basis?
Sure.
I'm the senior FAA Aviation Medical Examiner, and I do all physicals, all the flight physicals for the FAA, Class 1, which are airline pilots, Class 2, which are corporate commercial pilots, and Class 3, who's everybody else. And then I do that pretty much on a daily basis. I also do the special issuance program, which is a pilot that has a medical or other condition that precludes him from getting qualified to get a medical certificate. The FAA has a process which would be known as a waiver process to
Sure.
waiver the rules. They call it a special issuance. So if somebody has a medical condition that would preclude them from getting a medical certificate, we bring them in, we do special studies, special evaluations, we submit that to the FAA, and if they can qualify them through that program, then they'll still get a medical.
What a beautiful thing to have. You get that scenario where you find out you're not going to be able to qualify, and now you come over to the Stallion 51 and you see Doc and you make a plan. I like that. So it's probably a couple of tiers, right? I can only imagine the first tier being lifestyle.
Well, yeah, it depends on what's going on. But you know, as we age, things do pop up that you have no control over, or minimal control over. People get blood pressure, people get diabetes, people get cataracts, stuff like that. And those are all overcomable to the FAA if you're properly represented. It's all about proper representation. So that's what, you know, an interested flight surgeon or AME will do, is represent you to the FAA so that you can get that special issuance.
I see what you mean. So as a trend, are you seeing the aging population of pilots in a particular category? Or I mean, what's the first thing? If I were thinking about the next 10 years as I go through into my late years as being a pilot, you know, what are you seeing? Are you seeing the heart side of it? Are you seeing the diabetes? Or are you seeing the vision?
You see really a cross-section of what's represented in the general population. However, I will say that generally speaking, the average pilot compared to the average person is healthier.
More healthy.
Well, I mean, they know that they have to get routine medicals. I mean, the airline pilots have a flight physical every 6 months. A Class 2 pilot will have one every year, and a Class 3 pilot will have one every 2 years if he's over 40.
That's right.
And really, it's the over 40 guys that these things start popping up on. I mean, the young, healthy 22-year-olds, I mean, it's good to be them, but we're not them anymore.
It doesn't it doesn't last long.
Yeah. So, you know, it just, generally speaking though, the population of pilots is a little healthier.
Good.
And there's no secret to maintaining the health. I mean, it's not like it's a top secret anywhere, any shape of or means of the form. Healthy diet, exercise, don't do bad things too much, like smoking and drinking, and lead a healthy lifestyle, and that's all you can really do. And if you have a condition, get it treated. And especially for guys that are in their 40s and 50s and older, get your pre-screenings done based on the standards set by the family practice organization of the U.S. You know, your colonoscopy, your cholesterol,
right,
these sort of things. All that stuff.
Blood sugar levels for diabetes, just like you were saying. Yeah.
Right, because you know, in today's medical environment, early detection is everything. I mean, this is not 100 years ago. A lot of things are curable and or controllable if they're discovered early enough. So I'm a big proponent of preventative medicine.
I think pilots in general are the first to admit they can spot a trend. I think that's what you're talking about.
Absolutely.
You know, being able to have that data from the blood work, or maybe the conversation. You know what that predisposition is in the family history. You know, those sorts of items are markers in your assessment.
Well, right, and a good one would be pre-diabetes.
Okay.
Okay, now if you've got some lab values that indicate pre-diabetes, like your blood glucose is a little high, your A1C is a little high, but you're also sedentary and overweight, well, you know, you may be able to cure that or not evolve into real diabetes if you control your weight and your exercise. You don't necessarily have to go right into it and start taking a medicine. And so I would urge pilots that if they have some of these things to pop up in their lives, especially when it's early on and they're seeing a civilian family practice or internal medicine guy, they ought to negotiate with that doctor first to see if a lifestyle change will improve their condition instead of going right to a medication.
That's great advice. I mean, and I can only imagine, and I'm making it, back me up if I'm wrong, but I think, of course, diet and exercise, those have got to be just as important as a pre-flight and fuel in the tank.
Absolutely, and it's not ridiculous stuff. It's not like being an Olympic athlete. I mean, if you just keep active, eat a reasonably good diet, watch your bad things, you know, watch the cheeseburgers, watch the beers, watch the cigarettes. If you do that, that's about as good as you can do. Because it's got to be reasonable, otherwise the people won't do it long term.
I can appreciate that. I spell weather two different ways. You know, it's W-E-A-T-H-E-R and then W-H-E-T-H-E-R. It's about that, you know, whether I should be doing something or whether I should be flying that day. You know, if I'm not feeling 100%, you know, you alluded to it. You're the first line of defense on your own body.
Well, exactly, and I've got a presentation where I go through these steps where a pilot does a self-reflection, a self-analysis of whether he should fly.
Oh, let's talk about that.
Well, I can't remember exactly how it goes, but basically, yeah, exactly.
What, do you have an acronym? I mean, what's aviation without an acronym?
Basically, it's, you know, take a look at yourself, your position. Do you have adequate rest? Are you taking over-the-counter medicines? Do you have something going on? Did you eat something that doesn't make you feel good? And even more importantly than the physical things, is there something on your mind? Like the husband, the wife, the dog, the kid,
right,
the teacher, the boss, the cop that gave you the speeding ticket on the way to the airport. I mean, all those things that are of a mental nature, they can be distracting, and that may be even more of a risk than anything else.
In the airline days, we used to talk about the big five, right? You had a kid, you're having
the top five stressors? The top five stressors?
Yeah, what do you think? So,
those are real.
Kid, changing, maybe you're moving, maybe you're upgrading into a new position, you're having financial difficulties or a medical event. You know, those we used to brief that together because you have to work together with those kind of guys, and those were key tells.
Exactly. And now, you know, I have a huge airline pilot population, and I have a big corporate population, and a big, you know, what we'd call class 3 or regular flyers. And you know, the professional guys, they have regulators, and they have people watching them, and they can easily get out of their flying if they want. If an airline pilot's feeling sniffly or stuffy, he just makes a phone call and he's off the schedule. But you know, a guy that has a small business that's flying his single engine prop airplane on a business thing, and now he's behind schedule, he's got a meeting to make, he needs to self-govern and self-police himself on whether he should fly or not. He doesn't have the system behind him like a military aviator or
right,
a commercial or an airline pilot would.
You touched on two other things that I want to discuss. The first one was how you felt in a mental state. So, and we just finished brushing on that. The second one was over-the-counter medications.
Over-the-counter medications. When an aviator uses an over-the-counter medication, he is the doctor and the pilot and the patient at the same time.
Wow, that's a lot of responsibility.
He's diagnosing himself and he's prescribing himself. So to use over-the-counter medication, the aviator has to be very, very careful. In the military, we would say no unless the flight surgeon gave you permission. We don't really have that luxury in the civilian world with all the guys spread out all over the place. But if you have a medical condition and you're going to treat yourself, first you need to ask yourself, can I fly with this condition? Can I fly with this condition if the medicine wears off while I'm flying? How will I react to the over-the-counter medicine? Have I taken the over-the-counter medicine before? I mean, there's some medicines out there.
Don't test it in the cockpit.
Exactly. I mean, if you've taken it many times and you know what's going to do to you, some of the side effects of over-the-counter medicine can be dizziness, nausea, nervousness, heart palpitations,
and you add
all sorts of stuff.
A high cabin altitude if you're in a pressurized plane, or even worse if you're in an unpressurized airplane.
You got exactly. The
add
relative
stress
hypoxia
from maybe some bad weather, and you're working through the problems, can compound, right?
Yeah. So I mean, the take-home message is, don't use over-the-counters, but I know you sort of got to. I mean, you're on a trip and you eat some bad food or something. Just be careful, and when in doubt, don't fly, because those can be serious distractors while you're flying an airplane if you have gastrointestinal distress or whatever.
I got to ask you this. I've heard that that's the number one cause of unconsciousness. That
what is?
If you're feeling sick to your stomach and you actually try to hold it down. Now, I don't mean to be gross, everybody, but there's a reaction that if you're clamping down, you're actually squeezing down. That I heard
if you're trying not to have emesis?
Exactly. If you're trying not to throw up in the cockpit, I've heard that will actually induce dizziness and unconsciousness. Isn't there a term for that? I'm not sure.
There's no term that I know, but you know, I don't really know anybody that could do that if they're going to throw.
Yeah, if it's going,
take a bag with you. But I mean, the point is, you shouldn't have been there in the first place.
You know, all my friends, and they know that if you're going to go down that road, we're going for distance, not for volume. Okay.
Right.
Yeah. So anyway, all right. Enough of that. You know, I don't mean to be gross, but these are real issues. You know, being airsick is always a concern, not just for pilots but for passengers too. So
air sickness is not common amongst pilots. It's not that they're naturally selected, but people that get sick, motion sickness easily, they have a tendency not to go into aviation. You know, the kid that throws up in the back of the family car, like, you know, one of my brothers, he couldn't tolerate it.
Doesn't do it.
He's not a pilot. Yeah. So generally speaking, the aviators, but you know, the people you take, they can be very susceptible to motion sickness. And we see it all the time, especially in airplanes that maneuver, and another time would be in turbulence or bumpy air. and in instrument conditions where there's no visual reference.
You bet. Well, you know, I mentioned vestibular, and I like the notion of where we're going with feeling upset. You know, let's talk about the aerobatic guys and how are you seeing what kind of scenario with hearing? You know, we get our hearing and vision tested all the time. So when from a medical standpoint, how do aerobatic pilots handle that vestibular type of thing and prevent those kind of like somatogravic illusions and things like that?
Well,
is it just practice?
I mean, it's conditioning and practice, and they grow accustomed to it. It's the conditioning. It's like the G forces of G's that the Blue Angels pull without wearing G suits. Well, I mean, it's all your conditioning, your practice. It's like Olympic athletes. It's it's just like you do something enough, you're going to grow accustomed to it.
When somebody comes in for initial or recurrent training in the T6 and the P51, do you give part of the briefing? From a medical standpoint?
It depends. Sometimes I do. It depends on who they are and what their status is.
And so what would be an example of a brand new guy who just has no clue about the sensations, and now you're going to go up and pull G's? What kind of advice would you give somebody like that?
Well, I mean, for the forces of gravity, generally we have a G-lock brief, G-induced loss of consciousness. And I could start that right now, but I don't know if we have time. It takes about an hour.
We've got about 6 minutes left.
So we do that, and we can talk to them about the maneuvering and stuff, but the forces of the aerobatic maneuvers in the P-51, for instance, there are some G forces, but you know, things are done gracefully.
Right, so it's
not like you're just slamming the stick, and that's true even in military flying.
Right.
If you fly a 2-seat or a 3 or 4-seat, like a tactical jet that can do everything,
yes.
If you're smooth, your navigator or your Rio is not going to be sick. If you're not smooth, he might be sick.
Well,
so there's a lot of that going on.
I fly a corporate jet, and you know, if we're not smooth, you know, I can mess up the worst landing. But believe me, if I don't find that smooth altitude, you know, the white caps and the coffee are going to be more of a conversation piece than any bad landing I've ever had.
Absolutely.
So
absolutely.
I hope that you know, I'm trying to be funny about it, but you know, I really understand that. The work that you guys are doing at Stallion 51 has such an important medical aspect to it, you know, with regards to how you're feeling, whether you're ready for it. You know, you're going to go up there and pull some pretty good maneuvers, as well as thinking. You know, the mental part of this is, you know, you got to come prepared and you know, well rested, eating right, and ready for training, which is not a small thing.
Absolutely, but I remember, we don't train people to be private pilots. I mean, somebody that comes to get checked out in the P-51 usually has quite a bit of flight time, so they're not rookies. In fact, I may have discussed that on the radio thing I did this morning. The fact is, when somebody comes to train in the P-51, it's not like a young recruit training in the P-51 during World War II when he just went through a PT like a Stearman and a BT or a T6. Now he's got 150 or 200 hours, and now he's in the P-51.
Right.
It's different because the guys we're training in the P-51, they're older, they're more experienced, because it takes older guys with more experience and the funds to support that.
Of course.
So we're not training 22-year-olds, generally speaking. We're training guys in their 50s.
Yeah. Well, what are you seeing out on the horizon with medical trends? You know, we've got this great opportunity for pilots who have been out of it. You know, they can come and see you about, and now it's basic med. You know, that's a wonderful thing.
Yeah, the basic med is fine. I would recommend that if somebody can fit the bill as far as the aircraft type. But you know, if I'm going to lay a message on you for this particular interview, the last thing I want to discuss is my HIMSS program.
Love to hear about that.
The HIMSS program is a program that started about 30 years ago to salvage the careers of airline pilots that had alcohol problems. And now, fast forward, I'll make it quick. Fast forward, pretty much any class of pilot can end up in the HIMSS program, and generally it's because of an alcohol-related issue. And that would be alcohol dependence or alcohol abuse. That's the most common. It can also be drugs, okay? But generally speaking, when we're talking about pilots, it's alcohol. So if a pilot gets a alcohol-related incident, which can be many things, generally it's a DUI, that draws negative attention from the FAA because they want to keep the skies clean of guys that have, you know, dependence on stuff.
It's tough enough to do it straight.
Right. So it's kind of a big program, and it's gotten bigger and bigger since I've been doing it. The bottom line is alcohol is legal, and you can buy it on every street corner, but you don't want to have a problem with it. If you do, you get negative attention from the FAA, and they will make you do all sorts of stuff to get back in the cockpit. And if you're a professional pilot, you may be out for upwards of a year before you get back in. And there's a whole bunch of hoops you have to do. And we have that program where I work, at our office, and it's such a labor-intensive, long, drawn-out process. I'm recommending to everybody that likes to have a couple of beers or a cocktail or whatever to be careful, don't get in trouble, and keep it separated from your other life.
Be careful. That's a short version of really take a long look at maybe not doing that at all, especially if you're getting ready to fly, because the consequences are severe.
You've got the rules that say 8 hours.
Yeah.
8 hours. In the military, it's 12 hours.
And in my company, it's 12 hours.
Right. So that's reasonable, but that's assuming that you're just having a couple of drinks.
Yeah.
Now, if you have a lot more than that and you have many drinks, you can figure one equivalency is going to be metabolized every hour. So 12 ounces of beer, 6 ounces of wine, or an ounce and a half of liquor is going to be metabolized every hour. So if you're drinking heavily and you're at the end of your 8 or 12 hours where you have to wait before you're flying, you may still be metabolizing that alcohol up to the very last. And you still may have effects of what's called vasalgia, which is the hangover effect.
Right. Dehydration,
headache, nausea, that sort of stuff.
Now you've got a program about that. So let's walk us through, let's say I have to come and see you about all that. Are we talking about a clock that starts and now it's a year type of thing? What's day one look like? Briefly,
if a pilot has an alcohol issue, an alcohol-related incident, he'll come and see me, and if it's a DUI, he'll usually have to deal with the local guys first, which means license suspension, classes, all this stuff.
Getting out of jail.
Then he comes and he checks in with me, and I go, okay, well, if he's an airline pilot, he has a protocol. If he's a commercial pilot, he has another protocol. If he's a class 3 pilot, or if he's not a pilot, he'll have another protocol. And so it's not quite cookbook, but it's sort of. So we just go through what the protocol is for that particular guy, and we start working towards it. And once we get everything done, we make a nice packet, a cover letter. I give my evaluation, my 2 cents worth. We send it into the FAA, and we start negotiating on when he's going to get his special issuance for that particular condition.
Got it. Well, and that can take, sometimes it goes quickly, but I couldn't imagine that it's any less than 6 months, and certainly a year. And if you're counting on that,
I've seen it at 6 months, but that's like generally not airline guys. That's generally guys that have a DUI 3 years ago, and now they're 25 years old and they want to go to flight school. Those guys are pretty easy.
Right.
On airline pilot, it's pretty much mandatory 30 days inpatient training. Inpatient. Know what that means, right? 90 AA meetings the first 90 days you're out.
How about that?
Weekly and monthly group stuff, psychiatric, neuropsychological, all these tests. I mean, it takes 4 or 5 months just to get that done before you even send the packet to the FAA.
And these are check boxes on a form.
And those pilots all have to go up to the level of the federal air surgeon in Washington. They don't go to Oklahoma City. They go up to the numero uno guy.
Now you'll put the code on them, hand them their ticket, and pat them on the behind and get them on the airliner. But they're going to Washington D.C. to have a little powwow.
No, they don't go personally. Their packet goes.
Well, I'm just thinking, it might as well be them and all the associated
the
things.
The feeling is that they should know better.
Right.
I mean, alcohol is legal, and humans been drinking it for 5 or 6 or 10,000 years. I don't know. That's not the issue. The issue is abusing, dependence, and getting in trouble with it.
And then you have to reverse engineer that back out to get your medical back. Can you get a first class?
Oh yeah.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
So you can bring that back.
Initially, it was designed for the airline pilots.
And I like the idea that you're the advocate for that. You're an advocacy and a path that creates a solution.
Well, yeah.
I don't mean an advocate like
that is, but I mean one of the reasons I'm trying to promote this so much is because it's a heck of a lot of paperwork.
I bet.
I mean, this much.
Wow. I don't think I have that much of a stack in medical submissions, but I do keep it first class, and I have to go every 6 months, and so I'd hate to have to.
You do keep it first?
I do. I have to. Yep, ATP.
Excellent.
Yeah. So, we can stretch this out a little bit more. So I know HIMSS is important to you, Well, let's talk about some of the fun that you have. You know, I know that you've got a great staff that you work with at Stallion 51. Tell us some of the things that are going on there.
You know,
for a good
everybody
time.
that works at Stallion 51 is there because they want to be there, not because they need to be there. That's the
And
first
you wear
thing.
many hats. We were talking about that earlier. So
Everybody wants to be there. They don't need to be there. It's a great place. It's friendly. It's fun. There's always interesting stuff to do. I mean, for me, I keep my airplane within a 10-second, 30-second walk from my office.
how about that?
How about that? You know, and it's just, there's operations going daily and interesting people from all over the world that bring their Mustangs there, the formations and all sorts of stuff going on. I mean,
Well-
it's, you know what, Stallion 51 is a great place to visit, even if you're not going to fly, just to come by, take pictures, see the history that's there. It's really a great place.
I love it. You know, you can just walk in there and you know, don't feel shy. Just come on down to Kissimmee Airport, Kissimmee
Just come to
International.
Kissimmee Airport, follow the signs, and bring your camera and your friends, and we love visitors.
Definitely.
We're very hospitable. On
Walk in, you get to see the airplanes, the two P-51s, the Crazy Horse 1, Crazy Horse and Crazy Horse 2, Fang, the T6. Where's your plane?
Where?
Where do you keep yours?
I keep it right there in the hangar.
Right, so you get to see your airplane.
Absolutely.
All right.
And we have other airplanes there. We may have upwards of 6 or 8 P-51s
So
there.
visitors are coming in with theirs.
Yeah, we stable some guys' aircraft that perhaps live up north and
Right.
they keep it down here in the wintertime
Right,
because
right.
it's kind of snowy in Canada or Minnesota. So they keep it down here in the
Great.
wintertime. So there's always anywhere between 4 and 8 Mustangs there.
And you can be a part of that. So you can come in, take a look at the airplanes, go through the gift shop. I personally like when I go up to the second floor, you've got that beautiful rail out the side there, and you can just take a look at the approach end of 1.5 with all the, and watch the guys come over in the high break, right?
Absolutely.
That's a daily event.
Yeah, and you watch flight operations, generally, you know, mid-morning, mid-afternoon are the 2 peaks, but it can be any time.
Right. Those are great
But
times.
it's Monday through Friday. I mean, if you come out on Sunday, we won't be around, but
All right, great.
so.
Well, we're going to kind of wrap this up, but I just want to leave it with let's have our the best way to contact you and what's going on. Tell us about the website and how to reach out to you.
We've got the website, which is w.stallion51.com, which is the general website, and then you can go deeper into that website to the AVDOC 51. That would be my section of it.
Okay.
Or you can call the main number, which is 407-846-4400.
Okay.
I mean, we don't have a big staff, so everybody knows each other, and you know, everybody knows where I'm at, and we all know where each other's at.
Well,
so.
then I've got one more thing. Isn't there a raffle coming up? The Angel Flight raffle?
I believe there is.
Yeah. So you can take a look at one of those links up there. Take a look at what we're showing right now. There you go. Look at that.
Yeah,
Doesn't
that's
get any
nice.
more fun than that, huh?
Doesn't get much more fun than that.
Boy, look at the beautiful afternoon. That must be about the middle of May at about 2 o'clock. So join into the raffle. You could win a flight on that right there. Can you imagine doing that? That looks like so much fun. So you got an Angel Flight Southeast. You can go to that website as well as Stallion 51 for the raffle to win an opportunity to hang out with these guys. Doc, thanks. Have you had a good time?
Awesome.
I've enjoyed talking with you as well. Thank you so much for being here with us on Florida Aviation Network. And let's wrap that up. Well, folks, you've just spent the past 30 minutes with Bill Busch, Dr. Bill Busch at Stallion 51. And I'm John McLeroy, one of your hosts with the Florida Aviation Network, signing off. We'll see you next time. Thanks for staying with us.